excited to dig in here. This with kind of how Steve set the stage earlier as far as what does distribution mean to you. It's going to mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So we're going to touch on what some of our observations are. But before we get started, we're trying to start a little bit of a Bluetent tradition here. So do me a favor. Grab a piece of paper and a pen, and let's do a quick warm-up so that we can kind of plug our brains in just a little bit. And you're going to partner up, okay? And write down one thing that you might find in your car. Keys, Kleenex, chapstick, pen, I don't know. And a lot of this so write that down. And then you're going to talk to the person next to you, and you're going to talk a little bit about what you might invent with those two things, okay? So you got 1 minute to come up with an invention. So, and I say this in the context of, I'm pretty sick and tired of hearing that vacation rental managers aren't smart enough. You guys wear flip-flops and not penny loafers. You guys don't have enough money to compete with the big OTAs. You wear flip-flops. You can't compete with the penny loafers that are coming into this industry. And actually, I'm upset with Amy right now because I was going to play a little Twisted Sister. We're not going to take it anymore. Anybody have that on their Pandora play box? I don't know. I'm just wondering. So, Lee, what do you got? What did you invent?
I didn't invent anything.
What? Okay.
I got change for those penny loafers.
Oh, we got change for the penny loafers. I love it. I love it. The whole point of really what I want to get to is that everybody in this room is an entrepreneur on some level. You guys are all in business. You're all going about your business in a way that the big guys right now are telling you can't compete. And we're seeing it actually quite a bit different. We work with, I work with probably clients that have like 5 professionally managed units up to some clients have 10,000 units professionally managed. So it's a pretty wide picture that Bluetent gets to bring to you guys. And I'm hopeful that there will be some observations. Maybe we'll reinforce some of the things that you guys are doing. Maybe we'll challenge some of the things you're doing. But at the end of the day, whenever you're talking about kind of your direct bookings versus OTA bookings, it gets a little emotional. It gets a little gets a little muddy. We've all so I've got more questions for you guys actually to begin with because I want to learn just a little bit more about what you guys have going. So how many people are listed on VRBO? Come on, most of you, I'm guessing. Yeah, they do really well here. They're strong. Been here for 15 years. Driving a lot of reservations for you. Listed there. Of those guys, are you guys on HomeAway software or separate software? HomeAway software? Okay, so about 50-50, so you're connecting kind of maybe through a different piece. So VRBO is pretty good. Booking.com, we heard from Steve this morning. You know, this is the biggest marketplace in the world. Their traffic is huge. They get a ton of bookings. Booking.com, who's listed on Booking.com? Way less, okay. Interesting, probably, I know I'll attest to it. I'm sure Mr. Milo will as well. Booking.com's not easy. It's a little bit different of a marketplace to get listed on. Your guys' type of inventory isn't necessarily made perfect for that marketplace. And that's the big thing that I like to think about is kind of what is the marketplace and is it conducive to selling your type of inventory? Real quick too, condos. Who here rents exclusively condos? Lee? No, you got some townhomes. Houses, exclusive houses, kind of a little bit. Okay, so a lot of you guys are kind of on both sides of it. And what I'm going to get to is some of the observations that we're making and kind of where Bluetent's seeing this thing go. We're only about 12 months into playing in the OTA market. So we come from a much different background than, say, you guys do in particular with your understanding of VRBO and HomeAway. Mostly our focus and some of the observations I'm going to have today are pretty centered around Airbnb specifically, and then also as we get into Booking.com. And there's reasons for that. There's technology reasons for it. There's market demand reasons for it. As you guys can see, certainly VRBO and HomeAway are well established. Many of your connections there are very good. We're also going to talk about some tips and tactics as far as what it takes to be successful here. I'm mostly going to talk about Airbnb because I think probably we've been at this about 12 months. I think we've seen about $27 million in revenue flow through the Airbnb channel. So we're watching kind of versus like our websites. Like we host about 185 websites with about 30,000 units. We see about 310 million in direct bookings go through. So I look at those as kind of channels. I look at those at marketplaces. And so we've talking with Amy, we thought that this would be a good time for us to share really some of our findings, some of our observations, some stuff that we find where you guys might be able to find a leg up. Other places where we're still, frankly, dumbfounded by this stuff and trying to figure out what is the most efficient way to do it. But at the end of the day, the theme here goes back to your direct channel, and I'll talk about what I think are the 5 most important channels, and was part of one of my questions for Steve this morning as he was talking about some other channels to go with. I want to get some of your takes on, where you guys are finding revenue, where are you finding transactions, and to me it seems like there's kind of 3 main pillars that you're looking for. One is like, is it a pain in the ass to get on there? 2 is, are they working with my best interest in mind? And then 3 is, if anybody finds somebody that doesn't have one of those 2 things on there, raise their hand, because they're all kind of a pain in the ass, and none of them really have your best interest in mind. So we'll work through it. I want to talk about what we're seeing as far as, I think we've got about 75 companies running data through Airbnb, and I want to show you some of the things that we're seeing scrappy, entrepreneurial vacation rental managers doing in a pretty nice fashion. Who's listed on Airbnb right now? There didn't seem like, okay, more than I thought. I had heard somebody here was talking to me, merchant of record issues for Alabama. Is that, Susan, is that a problem for you guys at all? Are you working through that? What are some of your thoughts? What are you seeing on that level?
We're feeling like it's less of an issue because we're getting our money ahead of time right now.
Yeah, got it. So with a 60-day cancel. So, and I was talking to somebody earlier too about Airbnb and their cancellation policies. I think she was telling me that it was 24 hours. It's not. There's so much money at stake here. I think you guys got the memo this morning. Your exclusive inventory is in very, very high demand by a lot of people that want to sell it. So I think, well, I don't know, maybe with some of the exception to maybe TripAdvisor, most of these guys want to sell your stuff, and they'd like to maybe make it a little bit easier to sell. They're learning too. I mean, frankly, like, and you look at like Airbnb, where do they collect taxes? Where don't they? How do you know? Those are all really confusing pieces, and typically, like most things in this industry, is pretty fractured, pretty localized, and usually takes like a smart human on the phone to like work with you through questions and issues. It's not like, how do I list my vacation rentals on Airbnb if I have 150 of them? And actually, well, okay, cool. Well, only 90 of them are actually short-term rentals. The others are long-term rentals. How do I do those? What if I take pets? What should my damage deposit be? Who collects the taxes? Am I going to be on the line if I don't collect taxes? These are all observations that we have through. I think we're, again, and I just like to use the context of direct bookings where I think we'll see about 225,000 transactions on our web platforms this year, and only about 15,000 of those are going to be OTA bookings, made primarily Airbnb. So we're just taking observations too, looking for ways for you to make this really happen. Lee, you and I were talking earlier, when you come to Gulf Shores, Alabama, or Orange Beach, or even this area, what's the first thing you're thinking about? How to get back here, okay? And so I'm going to make the case also, too, that you guys need to be looking at these channels as cost of acquisition pieces. We talk about what's the lifetime LTV of your customer. And if somebody comes back 2, 3, 4 times, and we can get them to book direct on that second chance, we know that PPC for Destin Vacation Rentals, Gulf Shore Vacation Rentals, that's a pretty high bar to spend, okay? So that gets expensive. So we can actually kind of price out what is our cost of acquisition. What's our cost of acquisition look like? And that's where we're seeing some of our better customers utilize these big marketplaces, these shopping centers of travel to really enhance what they're doing and how they're going about doing it. Okay? Sorry, this is a little bit tough to read, but what percentage of your revenue is from OTAs? Anybody here over 50% of revenue from OTAs? That's okay, a little bit. And it's not, nobody's judging on this stuff because there's different parts of your life cycle where you guys are, right? There may be, maybe you're new and you're not listed on Google and you need to get customers. The OTAs are a great way to do that. The other side of that would be anybody here less than 5% are not doing OTAs at all. A little bit, seems like everybody. So everybody here does have their toe in the water, and Steve, it looked like you're doing probably about 15% of your total revenue on OTA business.
No, it's 40%.
40% of total sales. Sorry, I thought total sales were about 100 million, and you were doing about 20 million in OTA sales.
It's 40%.
But including phone and stuff like that. So 40% from V-Trip, Vacation Rental Pros. We're seeing, we can debate over a cup of coffee or a cocktail, what's healthy, what's not. But for the most part, be thinking of this as cost of acquisition, lifetime value of your customers, what's not a total pain, like where you have to hire a new person to handle an account. And we're going to talk a bit about this because we've got some observations. I'm not going to sit here and profess that I've got Airbnb's algorithm as far as how to get listed, number one. But I think we would all agree that they certainly like one thing for sure, revenue. They like to, and if you're producing revenue for them, you're going to be listed on their search results. Anybody here play Flappy Bird? Maybe a little bit. Okay, Flappy Bird. And this goes back to, it's almost like your Google listings too. It's like, if you're booking and you're driving revenue, you're going to flap your way to the top. If you're not booking and you're not driving revenue, you're going to flap your way to the bottom. So those are some things to think of as you're, especially looking at new channels, and we look at kind of Airbnb as a bit of a new channel. And I appreciate kind of how Steve put it this morning with he wants you to price it for the risk. That's an interesting piece as far as pricing strategy goes. I would make the case that maybe you'd want to start with a little bit lower pricing, get the Flappy Bird flapping up, and then move on from that. So we're going to talk about what works for your business and what doesn't, and kind of some of the observations that we're seeing, kind of how it goes. So I think a little bit of this is too, it's like kind of Bluetent's journey into this space didn't come from, hey, we think that OTA distribution is the way to go. It's been kind of an interesting journey for us to be in this space. But it was about 20 months ago when we realized, wow, we've got a lot of units here on our web platforms. We're pulling it from property management systems, normalizing that data, and then looking for other places to sell this. So that's how we got here. It's been an interesting journey. There's been a lot of players in this space. There's a lot of kind of emotions in this space. There's been guys that have been really big in this space, even as recently as 3 years ago. You would have said TripAdvisor probably might be, and with what the guys at FlipKey did to really get that whole thing started, they kind of really hit the gas pretty hard on that. Obviously, when HomeAway bought Instant Software and got access to a lot of those units, that was kind of the next step in that same direction as well. As far as how are units getting to these guys, that's how we see it. We know that selling online is not that easy. One, I was cracking up this morning. We heard about a data harvest and whether or not anybody was made aware of that. Answer's no. You're kind of waiting and hoping that things happen. Pricing, the way that algorithms work on the API side of things, those are all pieces that make selling online a challenge for your type of inventory, for what you guys sell. So that's how we're looking at this whole channel. So a few things that we've learned. Distribution is challenging, you guys. Regards to, you got pricing. How do you price it? What's the most effective way for you to price it? As we've gotten into this game, I've gotten calls from clients that are like, it's not working. We're not getting bookings. Well, and you, okay, well, what's wrong? Is the data there? Yeah, data's there. Okay, cool. Well, my price is 35% higher than my rack rate. Not to say we haven't seen that. We do see travelers, and I don't. And again, you guys will have to be patient with me because I'm skewing mostly towards Airbnb observations here, okay? Because that's where most of our revenue, that's where most of the transactions that we've seen. So the pricing's difficult. How do you guys want to go ahead and price it? The Airbnb pricing mechanism isn't all that easy, right? You get pretty much you get a cleaning fee, and you got to get everything right. Then when it comes out of your system, you got to kind of dissect that reservation and move cleaning fees, check-in fees. So you're touching all of these on an individual basis. So it's kind of back to number one. Is it worth it? Like how much you guys driving through this Airbnb channel to really make that stuff work? Pricing's not easy, and there's strategies that are associated with pricing. And like Brandon talked about on your website, I mean, anytime your pricing isn't right, you're going to have inefficiencies, whether it's low or high. But in this case, a lot of times getting the pricing right on these newer channels is a process. So go ahead and just write that down. There's not a good, perfect way to price on Airbnb. You're going to get different opinions depending on who you talk to and what is most efficient. Content, okay? Like content is really king, whether it's your own site or even these distribution pieces. As we're seeing this stuff play out, there's also a case maybe too to be made that your content might be a little bit different on Booking.com than it is on VRBO, than it is on Airbnb. So those are some of the observations that we're starting to see. No, there's no substitute though for great photography, well-written descriptions, and making sure that your content is portrayed in a way that really takes your brand, because we're going to circle back to you. Because again, this is all about you. You have the exclusive inventory. This is about you guys having control. This is about you guys making the best use of these tools. So content, taxes. Wow, this has gotten a little bit better, but I'll bet we spend a majority of our support time talking about taxes. Who's collecting taxes? What's the right for you? How do I know I'm not going to get thrown in jail? All of those types of things. Reporting. Reporting is also another thing that is a bit challenging. It's getting easier as this is becoming a little bit clearer, but getting kind of your KPIs as far as, how many reservations did I do this month versus last month? How much reservation revenue did I have this week versus last week? Being able to watch that stuff, being able to make pricing decisions, content decisions, other decisions based on reports. That's probably one of the biggest things I think you guys just in general need to be thinking a little bit about is, again, we're being told that we're not smart enough and we don't have enough money and we're in flip-flops and we're not good enough to run these businesses. You are. You got to really look at your reports. If I was to make one suggestion is to get a consolidated KPI report so you can look at it and say, my web traffic's up, my OTA revenue's up, have a simple report where it's not like you have to you hire the FBI or somebody to get in there and get you a report, okay? Guest communications, this is also very, very unique. You guys have whole systems that are built to communicate with guests, okay? Airbnb's system and now kind of where HomeAway and VRBO are going are closed communication channels, okay? Back to Flappy Bird, okay? So you have the whole system that is built around you being responsive, you caring, you getting back to people when they call you on the phone or email you through a website. How are you doing it through these closed communication channels? So that's a question for you guys. Also, again, had a client of ours call me one time and say it's not working. We're not getting the reservations. Well, then you go in and it's like, well, your reply score. So especially at Airbnb, they're watching your reply scores. Okay, so they're grading you as a host. Remember where they're coming from, right? So they're coming from like the one-off host. So that's still pretty deep in their algorithm as far as how your listings show up. So your guest communications, go ahead and buckle your seatbelts, guys, because that's another avenue that you've got to excel in. And how you guys go about doing that is, sorry, let me just, okay, cool. Okay, good. So how you guys go about doing your guest communications through these closed portals is something you got to plan for. Make sure that your reservations team has a handle on it, and that you've got a plan of attack for it. Because if you don't do it well, you're going to flap right down to the bottom. Okay, so that's part of, how do I get reservations? Well, you guys have inventory that's in demand. So it's typically, a lot of it's price, a lot of it's content, and a lot of it is how you guys play the game, right? They're going to set up rules as far as how you play the game. And like I tell my 16-year-old when they're in math class, it's like, learn to play the game. Okay, so let's figure that out. And the other big things is decisions on where to list. Okay, I'm going to come into that. So where to list, we're going to go through. You guys took a little bit of time out of your day. I flew out here from Colorado, took a little bit of time out of my day. So I'm hoping that where you guys take out of this are some tactics that we see successful VR vacation rental managers, some of the tactics that they're using. Hopefully you guys can take this home and start to implement some of this stuff so that you can get more efficient with where you do it. So a couple things. One is they understand their cost of acquisition. You guys, you've been doing this for a long time anyway. You guys, who here doesn't do PPC? Okay, so everybody, at least you're bidding on your brand terms. So you're at least you're doing some PPC. So you've got cost of acquisition kind of built into your overall model. You guys also have it difficult because if you sell a condo for $100 a night, you're not getting $100 a night, right? Unfortunately, somebody else owns that, and you're getting your 15 to 30%, how that looks. But they understand cost of acquisition, one. And two is they're really, really focused on how to monetize reservations more effectively, okay? And monetizing reservations is going to come in two levels. The first level is going to be right at the time of purchase. And then the second is going to be post-booking. What does your post-booking marketplace look like? What opportunities do you guys have to sell high-margin pieces so that you can actually monetize your reservations more effectively? When I say monetizing reservations, there's two things that I really, really like, and I'm sure you guys probably like it more than I do. Number one, travel insurance. Beautiful, beautiful. It makes you guys money. Saves the gas. It's a really nice deal. The other thing I really like a lot is like early check-in fees. So your operations are to a point where you can guarantee, maybe you've got 200 houses or condos, you take 50 of them and make them eligible for early check-in. Your operations are such that you can do that. Most of the time I'm seeing that's not homeowner money, that's vacation rental manager money. And that becomes a nice source of really developing. So they understand the cost of acquisition. Now, you guys have a lot of choices from who do I use for housekeeping to where do I list my properties to how do I get new owners. I'm going to make the case here, guys, that I think you should only focus on 5. Okay? One is you. 100% you. Your website, your channel. It's going to be the lowest cost of acquisition. We just went through 10 tips of like how to build good websites. There's some really good partners in this room. I'll say Bluetent would be one of them, but there's some really good, well-established companies that are good at selling vacation rental inventory online. And the reason why I say you guys are really good at what you do, and you do have enough money and you do have enough technology to play this game, is that the web assets that you guys have access to, pretty advanced. Especially, and Sauls would probably agree with me, over the last 5 years, with what you guys have access to versus where you guys were 5 years ago is amazing. So your website. Then you got, we heard from you guys, VRMintel and HomeAway. Those are big boys, right? You're driving a lot of reservations through there. They're probably the most established. They're pretty popular here. There's a lot of listings on VRMintel and HomeAway here. Utilize those. Booking.com and Airbnb, that's 5. You do those 5 in 2018 really well, you're going to have a good year. You're going to have a good year. You're opening up new marketplaces and optimizing those channels. That's our philosophy, would be to focus on those 5. I know there's a lot of other options, and there's some really good web entities out there. And there's certainly actually even here with like what Matt does over at Resorts and Lodges, what I see with like my friend Harry at ski.com. Like there's other marketplaces for sure. And those may bubble themselves up, but the connection here to these marketplaces, for most of you guys, you focus on these 5 and do them really well, you're gonna have enough sales reservations to keep your books full, work on your sales pitch for your owners next year, and hopefully grow your inventory. So what are people doing? What are they doing on these channels that are maybe different or taking some extra time? You know, number 1 is discovering the best content for each channel. Optimizing these accordingly. The image sizes, the descriptions, I mean, just think of it this way too, right? There's different shoppers at Airbnb than there are at VRBO than there are at Booking.com. You know, Booking.com is a bit more international, let's call it. Airbnb, although I heard a lot of people do talk about and worry about the Airbnbs, like being backpackers and stuff. John, I might have been talking to you. I mean, we did a Cayman Island booking, $13,000 before 6 months before Christmas. Hawaii market, huge Airbnb market. That's not cheap. That's not cheap stuff at all. That's 400 night ADR. Got a guy down in San Diego just blowing up Airbnb. So don't write off Airbnb as just your backpack travelers. Okay, that's not how it is. There's some big money rolling through there. So optimize your content for each one of those channels. Investigate if dynamic pricing strategies support your business. Okay. You guys should go stop by, talk to Joe and Frank, the Beyond Pricing guys. Pretty solid little platform there for sure. But also too, you know, should you manually be doing it? Like, so I know for Airbnb, right? Like you got your middleman fees, then you've got your channel fees, then you've got your traveler fees. So there is no price parity there. So how do you price for Airbnb? We see a lot of people marking up their rack rates. Frankly, that's what we see for middleman fees and channel fees. Usually in the 9 to 12% range is about what we see as a pretty standard kind of markup. But also too, I mean, we've got some clients that are taking like the Milo approach that mark it up 30% and they're getting bookings. So people are paying for the right to book through that piece. So, but I don't know if Velocity will stick up with that or kind of not. Every market's a little bit different. Every unit's a little different, and so everything's pretty unique. Also, too, at least in Airbnb, work on pricing competitively. Get a couple of reservations in there. Start getting your reviews going. A lot of these things are, kind of user-based, and so you're going to want to get good reviews. Price it competitively to get a couple of reservations going, get your team going, and make sure that you're not just like puking listings into Airbnb and being like, hurrah. It's all about reservations and revenue. So go ahead and take that. So that's a big piece what I'm seeing professional companies do for channels. They're looking at it this strategically. Okay. So the other thing that's kind of interesting that I'm seeing, this is kind of new, is you guys are looking at you're looking at lifetime value of a guest, okay? So when somebody comes through, and again, I'm sorry, I'll keep apologizing, but this is a bit more Airbnb focused for you guys. But even if they're coming through HomeAway or VRBO, a couple things that they're probably not going to get. One is you're not getting their full email address and all that kind of fun stuff. And two is they have a chance to buy travel insurance. And if there was somebody from VRBO or HomeAway here, they could probably answer that a little bit better. But my understanding is it's kind of a cheap, short type of travel insurance. So like people buy it and it's not the right stuff for what they need for your type of inventory, okay? So they're not buying the right type of travel insurance. So number one is you're not getting their full contact info and you're not selling travel insurance, okay? So I'm seeing really good companies start to email the guest and say thanks again for your reservation, because you can't email them, right? It's just an @Airbnb email address, it's an @HomeAway email address, and we're asking them to register. So come through and register their party. Give us your first name, last name, email address, and cell phone, so that we can better service your reservation. Thanks for booking on Airbnb, but I'm a professional management company. Welcome to our family. So start there. So boom, so you go ahead and you capture it immediately after booking. You're trying to do this. You've got a whole system in place to make this happen. Sorry, I thought I put the batteries back in. I didn't do it right. Now what we're seeing too is we're seeing good management companies trying to sell their own travel insurance. Why do you sell your own travel insurance? Because you get paid. That's one. Two is your guests. You know what they're getting. And you want them to have the right type of coverages, okay? And if you talk to Tony or you talk to Laird, they're going to talk to you about different type of coverages that you get with the travel insurance. And so highly, highly recommend, don't take chances with your vacation, and really working through that messaging component so that somebody doesn't show up and say, hey, I never knew that I could buy travel insurance, I bought the wrong travel insurance, or I didn't buy travel insurance and now I'm kind of screwed. Also, too, that will come back to affect you a bit. It'll be interesting to see how Airbnb kind of evolves their rules of engagement, but they do have some clauses in there that would worry me as a property manager. There's some pieces there. I haven't heard some of the stories. Steve talked a bit of it this morning where he had somebody cancel or ask for a refund 30 days after they had checked out, after they had already paid their money. You guys may have some of those experiences. I haven't been seeing a ton of that though, so I don't know. But needless to say, with travel insurance as a coverage on that's can't go wrong there. So don't just throw up your arms and say, okay, cool, it came through another channel. I don't really care anymore. Hopefully they get their door code and they can check in. Because again, Lee, what's the first thing you think of when you come to Gulf Shores? How do I get back here? Okay, and I know that if I come with it, and we've got this whole book direct thing going on, and we've got all these pieces to start to educate people on what it means to book direct, but when you're handling them like a professional, when they're through a professional messaging system, and they're being offered professional type of options, this all really helps your brand, and this really helps kind of what we're looking to do, which is turn these guys into lifelong guests. So they'll communicate their brand with strong email messaging. This is a big part of what, this real nice company down in San Diego, beachfront only. If you get a chance, check out the Fish Bombs. And the other thing I love about this industry, there's so many family businesses, right? So this is a father-son business, beachfront only. But they really kind of take their email messages and they communicate their brand throughout kind of those touch points with the guest. And so the guest now knows that it wasn't that, yeah, I booked through Airbnb, that's great. I booked through Booking.com, that's great. I booked through VRBO, that's fine. But I'm with a professional management company now. And there's a lot of benefits that come with that, a ton of benefits. And probably the biggest benefit is that next time I book, if I book direct, I'm going to save anywhere from 12 to 30% of my reservation. Great deal booking direct. And so that really becomes part of the overall strategy of how to tie this all together. They're going through they're going through all of these pieces to really make sure that you know that you're with a professional management company, and this kind of ties back to how does third parties hopefully build you into having your own piece of it and educating people more. And there's different ways to work with the third parties. You'll hear there's groups here that will get your listings up here under their brand. There's groups here that will get you up there under your brand. There's discussions to be had over what is the best way to do it. But I think at the end of the day, no matter what, when somebody checks out of your unit and they came to you through an OTA or through a third-party distribution, how many people here that do list on VRBO feel very confident that somebody leaving their unit knows that there was a professional manager involved? Not bad. It's a start, right? But we can always do better. It's a lot of like what you would talk to your phone reservations team. Hey, we can always close more deals. What do you need? Do you need more minutes? Do you need more money? What do you need? What are you always asking your salespeople? How do you close more deals? Same thing that you're asking of your website? How do you close more deals? And those are questions you should be asking all the time. The other piece that we're seeing as tech-enabled managers, that's you guys here, by the way. You guys are all tech-enabled. The amount of money and capital and time that it takes for you to call yourselves tech-enabled has dropped significantly over the last 3 to 5 years. You couldn't, I don't think you could realistically say, I'm going to connect to the major OTAs, have a website that's mobile-friendly and books quickly. I'm going to be able to have a SEO at the top of Google. I'm going to have a social channel that works for under $100,000 bucks. Now you're looking at under 20 grand a year for those types. So you guys are tech enabled, okay? So that's cool. The other thing that we're seeing people move to is they're automating their guest services. So somebody books through a third party, VRBO on the way, and now boom, they're into my guest services. Jason developed the whole company based on this. Glad to have you, right? That's a big piece of it. Bluetent this year, we actually just acquired a really cool, we're going on the website of it, right? So we just acquired a really cool company called My Guest Book. And so the idea is that the guest book, now you come in and you got your door codes in there, you got your house, all of your house instructions right there, and it's 100% branded you. Okay, so it's not an app, it's a web deal. And we could argue over a cup of coffee whether web or app's better. That's all good stuff. But those guys started this 5 years ago, 6 years ago. They saw it at 360 Blue. And that's kind of gone and changed and moved and whatnot. And it's still guests use that stuff. But at the end of the day, if you have your VRBO guests, you have your Airbnb guests using your house app or your web platform to get their key code and find out restaurants and how to run the washing machine. Your brand's going to be at the top of that the whole time. In addition to, you're emailing these guys your book direct and save. So there are a lot of ways to really use these third-party channels, you guys, to implement deals so that people know when they come back to you. You guys have money to play with. You got some house money here. Or you have rates. Either way you want us to call it. But we know that if you're marking up 12%, your condo's $112. Or if you're selling your condo for $100 on your website, it's a smoking deal. So what's the best way to communicate smoking deals? We'll talk to people. Email's a good way. Text messaging is a good way. Social media is a good way. Apps are a good way. Text messaging is a good way. Probably the 5 best ways to kind of communicate a deal. Maybe outbound phone calls. Talking to Matt a little bit about what his outbound phone call piece looks like. So I think those are all part of what we're seeing, how we see really good companies take advantage. They're using these OTAs the same way you guys are being used. Okay, you guys have access to exclusive inventory that's really nice. That's just yours. You guys hold the keys to the castle there. So just a couple of observations that we see. They're providing exceptional experiences and talking about what it means to be a guest of a professional management company. That's something that even if your VRBO guests aren't doing, you guys should be thinking a bit about going into 2018. How do I know that even if they book with my website or through my phone or whatever, that they're 100% sure that they're with me and that they know that I'm a professional company? And from in-unit stuff, to email, to text, to social, to cool collateral, all of cool koozies, whatever. The book direct, get aggressive about how you're doing that stuff because your guests are really going to want it. We know that that's how they come back is that they're going to want to come back to this area with their family, hopefully, for years to come. And if they're in your database, they're not in somebody else's. And that becomes quite valuable. Again, too, I'm seeing some of the better professional managers. They're going through kind of a revamp of their website. They're re-looking. I think Saul said it pretty well. When was the last time you went through and tried to book one of your units? And these are hard things. Is the website fast enough? Is it good on mobile? Are the images loaded fast enough? These are all pieces of kind of making sure that you guys are optimizing your direct channel to take advantage of what those third parties are doing. And so those are just kind of some pieces there. They certainly communicate the value of booking direct, and I think all of you guys can take that up to the next level. I think that you guys can take up your messaging, take up your collateral, take up your swag. I don't care if it's hats or frisbees, but the book direct message, the save when you book direct. As more people use these channels, and all of a sudden you kind of like you roll over the Airbnb thing, and it's like the traveler fee, and it's like, well, what do I get for that? Or same deal with HomeAway. Like they're charging an obscene amount of money for the right to book your stuff. So letting them know that they don't pay traveler fees when they book direct, that you are a professional company, I'm sure all of you guys can pick up your game in that effort. And so really working through their social and email places. You got their email address. You now can upload that into your email system, your CRM. You're now uploading that into Facebook. So your Facebook posts, it's harder and harder to get your Facebook posts seen now. But if you do have email addresses that they're attached to and they're engaging, you got a chance now to really kind of re-engage with that lead and turn them into a repeat guest. We're not renting a hotel room outside of Cleveland, Ohio that I'm only coming to once, okay? There's a high probability that your guests here are coming back. John, what's your repeat guess? You gotta be 70, 60%, 70%. So we know that once we get them, so I'm looking at these OTAs, I'm looking at these third parties as a great way to get that first guest. It's hard. It's hard to go to the top of Google and win that battle. You're playing with some really big boys. It's hard. You got some local big hotels here, a lot of money, show up really, really well on the maps. But you get them through a VRBO, you get them through an Airbnb, you market correct to them, you put them into your guest pieces, you get that going, you've got a chance to really thrive, I think. So what's next? I think what we think is next is a little bit more simplicity for you guys going into 2018. I think there's 5 channels. If you guys do those 5 channels very, very effectively, you're going to run a good business. You're going to see an increase in transactions, ultimately, hopefully see an increase in revenue. You work to bring those guys back into your family of kind of communication pieces, whether it's text messaging, email, apps, or social. You're going to have an opportunity to kind of turn them into it. And that's a lot of really what we're seeing is your book direct websites, pick it up. Make sure that people know that your book direct websites, it's your brand, it's you, best, cheapest way to book, the most efficient way to do it. You might even throw in more perks, become part of our club, our rewards. There's a lot of different words that you guys can use to be more effective there. Embrace that distribution. Use them how they're using you guys. You guys have control. And how you communicate with them, how you develop relationships with them, how you learn about what they do. There's a lot of money on the table for those guys. And they do have big fancy offices on both coasts and drive fast cars to and from. So there's a lot of play for those guys to make your units viable on their platform. And at least in our experience with Airbnb in particular and Booking.com, we do see that they have market managers that are assigned to your success. They're comped on you guys getting bookings, so they want bookings. Like we get calls all the time. How do we get more units on? How do we get more bookings? And so you do have a culture of that. And so a lot of that is how do you want to communicate with them? How do you hold them accountable to that? And how do you build success? Guest service and automation. This is going to be big. If you guys are going to run good businesses, run good P&Ls, run it. You've got to be more efficient, more effective with how your guest service is run. It's also a big part playing back into distribution and pushing people back to book direct when it's all said and done. And then mixing in a nice little flavor of marketing services so you just got a good brand. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. Like have a good brand. You guys are in like cool places. Like pick it up. Like good emails and good collateral and all of those kinds of fun things. I did just want to come back and talk about the big reason why we're focused on these two is because they are kind of new in the VR world. Airbnb was kind of anti-professional managers till maybe even like 24 months ago. So they're pretty new. They're trying to grow. They're trying to figure this thing out too. And you see it with them adding different cancellation policies, all of those types of things to try to get you guys to list your inventory with them. They're trying to help out with local taxes. They're trying to do some of those things. And if you've got a strategy to turn these guys into lifelong guests, I think you've got a winning strategy. Booking.com, it's tough. Like getting your inventory up on Booking.com in a way that's merchandisable and ready to buy, not easy to do. And so if it's easy to do, that's probably not worth doing. So that's one of the reasons why we're looking at Booking.com pretty hard. I talked a bit about kind of guest automation. We're pretty pumped about this guest book stuff. The custom branding, the robust messaging systems. It's a cool play for the vacation rental space. We think it's a nice addition to your portfolio of kind of digital assets and what makes your brand. And hopefully it can cut down on phone calls, number one. And number two, it's kind of like that portal back to your direct booking website. Those are all pieces of it. Last piece is, kind of the key takeaways here are, elevate your e-commerce strategy. Capture more direct bookings online and develop sustainability and independence. Those are big words. It's going to take an effort. Not easy. I don't think you can go Google how to. I think you can learn a lot from a lot of people in this room. You can learn a lot from, some of the vendors over there. We deal with a lot of different organizations, from Maui to Telluride to the Outer Banks to Gulf Shores. Get some different ideas on what we see is working and what's not. That is one of the cool things about industry events like this. And tip of our hat to Amy for kind of building this thing from the ground up. And it's kind of cool to see that this is a grassroots kind of by professional managers for professional managers. I know as a vendor and somebody that's in this business, we appreciate having the open and honest discussions with you guys. Your businesses are hard. It's not easy. It's not easy to do what you guys do. I know, and it's pretty cool for you guys to be able to kind of collaborate like this. So, got a couple minutes here before lunch. Maybe probably not even a whole bunch. Any questions, comments, thoughts? Anything? No? Pretty quiet. Good. Lunch. Everybody wants to add too many of those donuts, or that donut tray is pretty good for sure. But we'll appreciate the opportunity. Thanks, Amy, so much. And yeah, where are you going to get your bookings? How do you get them to come back? All big questions and kind of neat puzzles. So thanks so much, and we'll see you bumping around. Appreciate it.